Yeah, welcome to another episode of the Racer X Exhaust Podcast. Jason Weigandt here. This week's guest is Ryan Dungey. Actually talked to him during the Houston Supercross swing, but we had so much racing going on with these 3 weeks that I actually held it until we got back to a normal week here where we don't have a Tuesday race. But we're not really talking in depth of this year's Supercross series. What I want to get into is a topic that I covered with Jeff Stanton back in December, which is trying to find yourself with life after racing. I'm always intrigued by this. If you get to the very top 1% of any field, sports especially, obviously you've got a level of ambition that's pretty crazy. Even just to become a professional in a sport, you've obviously got a very high level of ambition. So when you retire young, and in the case of Stanton, who we talked to, or Dunge, they retired 26, 27, respectively, for the two of them. So what are you going to do with all that ambition? And no doubt about it, Ryan Dungey did struggle with it. We saw several different stops and starts of what he was going to do. He was kind of a brand ambassador type guy with KTM. Then he became team owner very briefly, a part owner with the Geico Honda team. And then we heard stories of a comeback for the 2020 racing season. But here it is, in 2020 for the 2021 racing season. And here it is. The 2021 season has begun, and Dungey has not come back and is not racing. We knew that that was not going to happen, but I wanted to find out just how close he got and what are his feelings now that the series has begun and he's not in it, because obviously at one point he wanted to be. But what he's really found now to take some of that ambition and put in some effort and have a goal every morning when he gets up is RD Coffees. That's his new coffee company. You can go to rdcoffees.com. and check it out. This is small batch stuff. This is high quality, or as Ryan would say, the highest quality. But I think the really cool thing about it is, look, to me, I'm like, whatever, man, coffee's coffee. I don't even know the difference. You know, I'm always going for the cheapest version of anything. But I think it is cool that this is not Ryan Dungey just slapping his name on a bag that someone else made and then they ship it to your house. He actually set up roasters and all this stuff in his garage, and as hands-on could possibly be with this project. And I think a lot of that is not just the passion for having a business or coffee itself, but he had to find his place in life to apply some of that ambition, and he's finally found it. So we'll talk to him about the coffee, we'll talk to him about the comeback that did not happen, and a few thoughts on Supercross. But like I said, I recorded this when we were in Houston, so the Ken Roczen 3 in a row, and also Moto Car Fight Club, which is coming up in South Carolina. That wasn't a thing yet. So there's going to be a car race in South Carolina. I'll have more information coming up on that. The event's taking place in about 2 weeks, and it's going to be crazy. So there is a car dirt track, pretty close to me. It's in South Carolina. I live in Charlotte in North Carolina. It's actually owned by Eddie Ray. Eddie Ray, longtime moto guy, won a title at Loretta's, lives, eats, sleeps, breathes Loretta's. He might be sleeping there at the track right now, even though they only race there once a year. Married to Jessica Patterson. You certainly know her from the women's racing days. So Eddie's all in as a moto guy. He does own a car racing track now, but they do hold motocross races there as well. He's building a separate motocross track. Got together and said, hey, what if we do one of these fight club type events for the retired guys in cars so they can bash into each other and race hard, but they don't have the risk of injury. So that should be interesting. That's Moto Car Fight Club, and Ryan Dungey's actually in it. You've got Carmichael, Reed in this one, Jeremy McGrath. Ryan Villapoto's now out. Apparently has something else to do on that date, but Brian Deegan is in. And then a burgeoning, growing businessman here. I went to the Moto Fight Club people, and they said, man, we'd love to get a current racer in there. And I'm like, I got your guy. I'll make it happen. And now Justin Brayton is competing. Oh, it's going to be a good time. So we'll have more information coming up on that. But Dungey will be competing in it. That's February the 25th. Just go to @Moto Fight Club or go to Dungey's Instagram and you can find more about that. Anyway, this is more about the life after racing and the comeback that did not happen and the current business for Ryan Dungey. Of course, this podcast brought to you by Yoshimura. This is not an endorsement from Ryan Dungey. However, during those early seed days of a potential comeback, he did have a Honda put together for him. You know, his brother, Jade, is the mechanic for Chase Sexton. So Honda, Jade put a bike together, and was riding a Honda doing some laps. It did have Yoshimura exhaust on it. Yoshimura is our sponsor here for the Exhaust Podcast. Check out the RS12 exhaust system. Looks really good right now on Ken Roxon's machine. Yosh had a big head start on developing exhaust for that all-new 2021 CRF 450R. Seems to be working for Kenny Roxon. And we'll see how it goes actually for Sexton, who I think is back this weekend in Orlando. Somebody pointed out to me recently, Mathis and I have a new podcast, which is called The Re-Raceables. Look it up, Re-Raceables, where you get your pods. We review old races. Our latest, we just reviewed the 2005 Orlando Supercross. It's amazing how things go full circle. In 2005, James Stewart, a rookie in the premier class, gets hurt at round 2, comes back from injury at Orlando. And now James Stewart is training or coaching Chase Sexton, who got hurt at round 2 of his rookie year this year. And Sexton, I believe, is set to return at Orlando this year. It is like the exact same thing 16 years later. It is disgusting that was 16 years ago, by the way, and I remember these things like they were yesterday. That's how old we're becoming. So, yeah, check out Re-Raceables, new podcast. Mathis and I would call people that are involved in the races. In the case of Orlando 07, we were very fortunate. We actually talked to Ricky Carmichael himself about racing James Stewart on a dry track for the first time. And we always usually bring Davey Coombs in because he was a TV pit reporter most of these races that we're reviewing. So he was literally on the ground floor getting a view of these things, and Davey's a good storyteller. So check out Re-Raceables, subscribe, and thanks to our sponsors over there for bringing it to you. I think that's Liat, Maxis, and Blenzall for our new pod. Really have a lot of fun putting those together with Mathis. Anyway, for this pod, also, this is brought to you by MX Tech Suspension, professional aftermarket suspension for riders who want excellent comfort and control. Quality engineering is based on a lifetime of specializing in dirt bike suspension. They have developed the Lucky Fork, dual springs, dual cartridges, Huck valves, and ultra lightweight. MX Tech utilizes the latest in technology and coatings to deliver maximum performance while remaining the lightest shock available. Head over to mx-tech.com for more information. And of course, really everything really is brought to you by Racer X podcast. We do those for fun. Yeah, we got some sponsors, but we got a big business we run here, and it begins and ends with subscribing to the magazine. We'll give it to you both print and digital. You can read the digital edition right there on the website. Go to racerxonline.com/Weege. Our latest promotion, the travel package. We'll give you a license plate frame. We'll give you some stickers for your vehicle. Give you the magazine, print and digital. Subscribe. Go to racerxonline.com/WEEGE, and you can read every single word from the magazine on the website, but only if you are a subscriber. Now let's get to it with Ryan Dungey. Dude, it's January. You're just in Minnesota. You're just a Supercross fan watching on TV. Is that what goes down?
Well, this year, yeah.
Yeah.
I was. Yeah, actually, I was just thinking this is the first opener that I haven't been to since 2006. Yeah.
Oh, so you always came to Anaheim anyway?
Well, yeah, because when I turned pro, I did the East Coast, and I went to the first round.
Yep.
To watch, and then I was living out in California, and then after racing, I was always at Anaheim 1 every single year. So this is the first one that I wasn't there, which was kind of seeing the buzz in the media and all the stuff. I was like, man, I kind of feel like I'm missing out.
I know. So, oh, that's right.
Exciting. Yeah.
That's right. I forgot. Last year, you were there with the Geico head on, but that feels like 9 years ago because of everything that went down in 2020. That was only 1 year ago. It feels like 20 years.
I know. Yeah, it's the phrase when people say that the days are long but the years are short is getting to be truer every day.
There you go. Yeah, so, I mean, are you just watching at home on TV as a fan and I guess reading website and checking social like anybody else?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, with all the information you can follow up on these days, whether it's riders posting or you guys posting stuff on Racer X and obviously watching it live on TV. So just kind of, pretty up to date with everything.
But you don't have you're not secretly working with some rider or coaching anybody, like you're just Ryan Dungey right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, now... Look, we knew that one time you were even thinking of racing, so how difficult has it been? Like, now the gate is dropped, you're not in it,
You're not even at the races. Like, has it been tough, or have you gotten past that point? Because obviously at one point you really wanted to be in the game.
I did, and I think there's always that part of me when I'm watching racing, I of course, yeah, it's more as a fan now, but I feel like I'm always putting myself in that mental mind state that the riders are in, or all right, trying to control the nerves and stuff, or, you remember every single year what that was like. But yeah, of course I miss it. And I've tried to ultimately put stuff together to be back, which hasn't come together. But at the same time, that's okay. We're moving forward. And I've always been thankful for the career that I've had, of course, in racing. So, but for the most part, yeah, it's, you miss it watching it, but at the same time, it's exciting too. So,
okay, so this attempted comeback thing, like, I'm sure you heard people saying, "Oh man, why would he do that? What if he gets hurt? He could ruin his legacy." Like, did you care about that? Did that run through your mind? Did you say, "Yes, that's a potential risk, but I'm going to take it"? Like, because it's kind of weird. I heard more people worried than excited. If that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, that is a factor in our sport, right?
Yeah.
There is a level of risk, but there's a level of risk in a lot of things. Maybe the risk is higher, right, in racing, but, I never wanted to let fear or risk kind of control my life in a sense. And, and ultimately this isn't just my decision. There's a lot of people a lot of things that had to come into play, all to which, my wife being on board with. So, starting there and then from there, it was just trying to find putting something together, making the calls and making sure that a ride was there and that the money was there to back it. Cause I didn't want to come back to ride for nothing either.
Yeah.
So there were some deals that presented themselves and would have been good, but as far as being worth it to come back, not there. So, and ultimately too, I know maybe this is long winded, but a lot of things had to come together, but ultimately, doing it under kind of my circumstances. And that's why we're looking at doing a Supercross only deal because like I've chatted before with others, it's like, there's a lot of things that have gone into motion in my life after racing that I don't want to put a hold on or have to, make others suffer, like my family and not being able to see them. So it's just like being able to do it on my terms in a sense where it would have been, I didn't want to put everything on hold and like the coffee, right? I started the coffee thing. Now we have Harper as a daughter and other things going on in our life. So, I didn't want to throw that all away. Right. And, or the opportunity or the things that are in motion to just go back racing and make it all about racing again. So, there would have been a good balance, but hey, we tried, we seeked it out, nothing's there and we're moving forward. So.
You mentioned that balance. Like, look, you were super driven and you were at the front your entire career. Was it like, hey, if I come back, my goal is to win just like before? Or was this more of I'm going to enjoy it and what I get is what I get? Or do you even know?
For me, it was always, if I was going to do it, it was to win, it would have been tough for sure. I mean, without a doubt, being removed from it for 3 years. So, putting in the work and even this summer, I was practicing, I was putting in the time, putting in the volume and the body was responding. So making sure that was okay. But ultimately, like to come back and do it, I mean, I wouldn't do it for anything, less than to come back and to win. I mean, that would always be the goal. And maybe one would say like, well, that's not fun. You're just going to put pressure on yourself and, drive yourself in the ground again. But that's the only way I see doing it. So
this is not a victory lap, shake some hands, kissing babies. Like, you were an athlete. You were coming in. If you were going to do it, you were going to do it 100%.
Well, yeah. Yep. I mean, I wouldn't be happy if I went out there and just tried to, get a top 10, right?
Right.
Like that would drive me insane. So, there's a lot of talk around it. And, at the end of the day, I always try to live my life as, the way I would want to live it, and, granted I do have a family and making sure it's in line with that, but at least I'm doing what I want to do, and so, just want to not let somebody else predict or determine the direction I should go either, so.
Well, what's interesting, and I've talked to every rider about this, and I've probably talked to you about it sometime. Like, you don't get to the level you get to without having like an unbelievable level of ambition. Like, no one can get to this level, even as a pro, let alone winning titles, unless they're really ambitious and every day they're super driven. So it makes it hard, I would imagine, to ever fully enjoy it, because it's like literally unless your day is perfect and you win every race and every lap is mistake-free, et cetera, it's got to be hard to balance that, because you can't just turn that ambition off, I wouldn't think, or you would be terrible. You have to keep it on the edge like that.
Well, it is definitely hard. It's kind of one of those things, and of course that would have been a challenge for me as well, keeping the balance, but it's, that desire to, hey, things didn't go your way and you could have done better. You're hard on yourself. You made this mistake. You didn't win, or why aren't you winning, or what's going on that you aren't performing like you should. So it's like it's kind of it does start to kind of take a hold. A lot of your mind throughout a lot of your days. So of course, but always just like, and that was the one thing when I was racing, like, that I got better with as my career went on. It's just, I think it's maintaining that perspective. Of course, doing everything you can to improve and get better and to perform at your highest level and achieve what you want to, but also, that it isn't everything, and also maintaining that perspective of, keeping the right perspective is hugely important, right? Like, is the glass half full, or is it half empty? I mean, it's you sound like that. Well, that ain't a big change, but it's very huge at how you look at things in life. So, and keeping the balance.
Yeah, and I mean, it does make sense. It does. I know it's a cliche, but that does make sense. And I do feel like, hey, remember, like, before 2017, I actually ended up going to lunch with you and your dad, like, dude, like the day before Anaheim won, and it seemed like, I mean, that's the most pressure-packed thing, and you have the number one plate and all this, and you seemed totally normal, like not like a dude who was about to race the next day. So do you feel like you did get to that point where you were both racing at a high level, but also enjoying it and not just stressed and miserable all the time? Did you get there?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it is hard to do, but it's being able to enjoy life away from racing, but when it's time to do your job, I think that was the biggest thing. Hey, and that's where Eldon, I would say, helped me out a lot, and I could take a lot of the, question marks off of things. But like, hey, when I was going to the practice track, focus, making sure you're hitting your marks, do your job, do it right. But when you leave, hey, go enjoy your life too, and keep that balance, and go take your wife out and go do stuff that you wouldn't normally do, and and at the end of the day, and I say this and it sounds weird, but it almost became a little more. When I was racing, I could start blocking out all the riders and just going out there and like almost like if I was on the race night and the gate drops and I was just like at the practice track, right? When I started seeing it like that, it almost became a little more duller, because it was like you were just practicing all the time, But you did have the race going on around you, but it was important to block out the things you couldn't control, and that was outside of yourself. I couldn't control every other rider. I couldn't control what they were going to do. I just, focused on myself. So it almost became nice because my mind calmed down and I could really execute and get the most out of my performance. So, and even scratch that, it didn't become dull. It just became, I was able to kind of, like I just said, clear my mind and keep more focused. Yeah.
Well, dude, that sounds like the thing that every rider, that's like the zone they all try to get into. Like every rider always says, right? Like, run your own race, run your own race. Try to race on Saturday night like you do at the test track on Tuesday. So, I mean, that's kind of the goal, isn't it? To eventually get to that mental state where you can approach a race just like hit your marks, don't worry about anything else, and just perform.
Yeah. You tell a lot of riders that, and even people told me that before, like, you just race the track, those guys are obstacles. But until I actually understood and really really understood what that meant, it went in one ear and out the other. Right.
So did that cut down on the overall stress and the things that would take away from the enjoyment? It sounds like it's almost a little more enjoyable to be at it that way than think of every race as like this nightmare high stress scenario. I would think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And and I started working with some mental coach guys too, and just learning a little bit more as well. And the one thing that really also it's a risky sport, but the one thing that really helped me was like, it's more dangerous going out there riding with fear than it is if you would just go out there and execute like you do at practice, right? Like, if you ride timid and nervous and scared, well, you're going to put yourself in a bad position. You're not going to be 100% focused on yourself, and you're going to, you're probably not going to get a good start, and you're going to be back there with the other guys, and that's where there's more risk in the back of the pack, right? So, heck, if you could execute, get the start, you got a clear track out front of you. I mean, it's safer out front, So there's just a lot of factors that I think riders, once you get to that level, you can just really start. It does become more enjoyable because you're not fighting your mind. You're not fighting yourself in your mind so much. I think that's where the big battle is.
Yep. So what I'm getting at here is you have this high level of ambition. That's how you get where you get. I'm sure for a few months it's like, sweet, I can relax. I have no pressure. But then so let's say that's 6 months or a year. But then what has it been like since then? Because it seems like you thought of a team owner thing and a comeback, and now you got this coffee thing. Were you trying to find something?
Yes and no. Like, okay. I do think, while I was racing, there was always an interest for me. Like, I always wanted to start my own business. That was one of the things that, like, I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was like that was one thing after racing I wanted to do. I do, and so once racing stopped, of course, like, yep, you get your break after a couple months, but then it's like, and mine kind of stopped quickly, and I really didn't have anything in place to kind of move forward. It was then all becoming apart, like, okay, what do you want to do moving forward? And start, thinking about, okay, like, yep, and start being able to pursue those other interests that you kind of put off hold throughout your whole racing career until now. And so yeah, it kind of became like, personally, what do you want to do and get involved in and start, and two, kind of within the industry, how do you want to move forward and apply yourself? And I will say in the industry, it was tough for me to kind of know where I wanted to go because I only knew myself as a racer, but I definitely did try to apply myself in helping kind of the next generation of guys and the team I was on at the time with KTM and, Marvin and Cooper, who came on board as well. So, we did a little bit of stuff there. So, without being long-winded, but just applying myself. Yeah. Were you okay with going all the way back into the grind and it being 7 days a week and traveling every weekend? Or did you not want to do that? With racing?
Yeah, like, were you like, hey, if this leads me to the team manager or the coach or whatever, and I'm in the grind 7 days a week, that's fine? Or were you like, nah, I don't want to go back in that deep?
Yeah, I think I always wanted to maintain a balance. Now, becoming a team manager, that was something, that was going to, require moving out to California, and it was a full-time job.
Yeah.
So there, to be honest, like, there were things that, I did turn down because of,
right.
Where we were going to have to live and move and the time commitment. And I did even with the Geico thing, like, I made it very apparent in the beginning, like, hey, I want to spend a lot of time on this thing, but I have other things going on in life that it can't be all my time. Right. And so, that's where the Geico thing was going. It was going to become all consuming, and heck, we just had a daughter at the time, and so it ended up not being a good fit. So, I'll be honest, like, yeah, I've made mistakes and I've struggled to kind of find my place, but, I used to look at those as, some of my biggest disappointments, but now I've kind of look at those as some of my greatest assets because, heck, I've made mistakes and I know what not to do now. So it's all a learning lesson that I can apply moving forward and ultimately make good decisions from too. So.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme, this has been, 2 years? Like, it didn't take you 20.
Yeah, seriously. But it's important to learn quicker than later, I guess. Yeah.
It probably felt like, man, okay, this didn't work. It probably felt like, stressful or was taking a long time in the moment. But if you really look at it only being 2-3 years out of racing, I guess it's not that nuts to figure this out.
No. It does feel a lot longer than it has been for sure. But yeah, it hasn't really. It's only been a couple of years too. Yeah.
Okay, so this coffee thing, how much is it just that it's cool and fun to do it, and how much is it no, I really need something to apply and I'll just make a coffee? Or is it specifically like, nah, this is what I want to do? Or is a lot of it like, I have to get up every morning to do something? Or is it this specifically what you want to do?
Well, I definitely will say, in terms of putting into a question, does this make you get up every morning and excited to go forward and do it and apply yourself? Absolutely.
Okay.
So, when I was racing, like I said, one of the things I wanted to do was start a business, and two, I wanted to kind of I always felt like, hey, following my passions and doing something that I was passionate about. And coffee, I think for those who knew me, knew I loved coffee and enjoyed coffee. They probably didn't know I wanted to start a company out of it all the time, but for very much so throughout my whole racing career. Through traveling different states, different countries, that became something. Me and my wife, every time we'd land, in a different city, we would go to one-off coffee shops, and it just became something that was a natural drawn interest to me. And so, whether you start at first, it's like, well, why is this cup of coffee better than this cup? And then along the lines, you start learning about the beans and where they're sourced and the roasting process, and actually. Through a couple mutual friends that I met along the way in my career, I was able to learn a lot as well. Who they had coffee shops and roasteries and stuff like that. So it just was one of those things. Like anybody, I mean, it's a passion, and it became an interest to me. And so with wanting to start a business, I was like, what, after racing, that's when I started putting a lot of time and thought into it and kind of making a game plan. And I didn't pull the trigger right away because I wasn't really sure where I wanted to compete. Like at first it was a coffee shop and building out a roastery and stuff like that. But I thought, as time went on, it finally kind of found its place. It's like, you know what, I'm going to keep it simple, and, I'm going to, roast small batch specialty coffee, and we'll start there and grow from there. And so far it's been really solid. So it took a while, but I was also in no rush to kind of find my place with that either. So I wanted to do it right.
From hearing, I know you're on Mathis's show like a month ago, and dude, you're like hands-on. Like, you're not just putting your name on something.
No, for sure. I mean, I guess from the very beginning, setting up the company, I was doing everything myself. I mean, I built out my garage. I had a nice space, and I got the roasters, and I was bagging it. I was, packaging it. I was shipping it. I was doing the whole 9 yards. And that worked for a while. I will say it was really good. And it was actually really cool to see the response that people had and the support. And since have grown. So from there, it kind of naturally, we're out of the garage now. It's kind of more I would say the R&D testing facility where I kind of try different roasts and blends and stuff. But, now we have a roasting partner. It's actually a really solid setup, and I'm very much involved in every detail of the way as well. And so, we've grown without sacrificing the quality as well. So it's been an awesome project. I say a project, but it's been a fun challenge to be a part of. I think it's kind of the challenge that I was looking forward to, and being able to be involved in every aspect of the business and oversee it all as well, and get some really good people on board. It's kind of that next venture that I'm excited about and putting a lot of my time into as well.
So that gets to my next thing. This has helped with that. You're trying to find yourself, find what to do. Do you feel almost a little relief right now? Like, okay, I got something now. I got a passion and a hobby and a job, a business, all that. Does it help? Has it helped with that?
Yeah, I for sure. I think the biggest thing is when racing stopped, and if I could try to keep it simple, racing challenges you in so many ways, right? Like, it's stressful, it's tough, and everybody knows that. But at the same time, it tests you. There's the pressure. It tests your character. It tests you in so many ways. It challenges you. Like, hey, are you going to live up to the challenge? Are you going to give up? Are you going to move? And so I think the biggest thing was just like I needed something to challenge me, because if you're not challenged, you don't grow. And it's like anybody who knows that, it's like man, like you always want to keep improving and getting better and keep learning and applying yourself. And I think that was the thing that was, that came to a stop really quick, which I didn't know that, right? Like I couldn't have known that unless I went through it. So, as I was moving forward, knowing it's going to take time to find that next thing, right?
Yep.
This for sure has helped fill that void. And it's something I'm passionate about too. I feel like I'm going to see it out, and no matter how hard it gets or where we want it to go and how we want to grow. And so putting in the time and the effort and being committed to it as fully as possible too.
I was talking to Jeff Stanton a few weeks ago, and he's had a ton of different things he's been involved with since racing. And he's like, man, I was lucky. I had a family farm. Like the day I was done, I had something. And he mentioned that he's talked to you about this through the years. So do you feel now like the racing comeback, like now that you got this coffee thing going, has that quenched that thirst? And they're like, I would never go back to racing. Or is it still, you still have other itches?
No, gosh, it's hard to answer, but for the most part, how do I say it? I know it's,
well, I threw it at you. Like, now that you've got this thing rolling, has it changed your whole perspective on things? We're like, okay, I'm good. I got something now. Or are you still looking, searching in other things? Or are you good with just this one thing?
No, I personally, I always feel like I'm going to be a guy who, what I'm going to do, I want to do it 100% and do it right, of course. Mm-hmm. But I always feel like it won't just be one thing that I'll always be wrapped up and involved in. Like, I'd like to have multiple things. Granted that I balance my time the right way.
Yeah.
And that's what I was talking to you about. Like, yeah, I could see, I think with the racing, where what I miss is the, I enjoyed the kind of the suffering part, I think I sometimes confuse, risk, like, there's physical risk, right? And there was something for me that when I lined up on that gate that was so hard to overcome every single time was and I felt like when I would face it, and which I faced it, hundreds of times, the nervousness that, controlling your mind, fighting the fear, keeping the faith, putting yourself in a situation that's really uncomfortable, and then when you'd come out on the other end, there was something like you were winning, right? You were beating that, and so sometimes today, although I don't face those high pressure, fear, tough situations as far as like a dirt bike race, I sometimes feel like I'm not winning, right? So it's like you want to, and it's like a mind game, right? You want to beat that still, and you want to prove to yourself you still have it. So, there'll be others. I think like racing is such an extreme situation that, you're going to experience those same feelings, same, emotions in other areas and have to conquer those. Right. But racing was just in such an extreme, sense that when you're on the line, that high pressure, the nerves, the excitement, the adrenaline, that I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I don't think I am, right? But, it's the one of the most uncomfortable places to be, but you got to fight the urge and fight back and control yourself and get the job done. So finding that in other areas is tough, but I know that's kind of long-winded.
Well, I've always wondered. I'm like, you were always a guy that I actually liked the training. So I'm like, I wonder why he doesn't just do triathlons or cycling races or marathons or whatever. But is that not extreme enough? Like, nothing's more nerve-wracking than going to the gate. So is that part of the problem where, running a marathon, you don't get that same feeling that you get on a starting gate for a Supercross?
Yeah, the putting in the time isn't a problem for me. I enjoyed every aspect of that, and even if I'm tired, I can fight through that. But you've done it. I don't know, just you've done something your whole life, and it's fun. It's exciting. It's a thrill. The competition factor is also something that just you're going against other guys and trying to be the best. It's exciting, and. Not to make it about anything other than just sheer it's a sheer enjoyment of what you enjoy. So.
Yeah. So are you like, I'm good now, or would you still think about racing again?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it would have been easy if you're like, no, I got this business now, and that's totally quenched all the thirst. I'm totally good. I got something now. But you are saying that nothing's quite like racing. So that's why I got to ask.
No, okay. Just to keep it simple, look.
Yeah.
No, I'm 100% fine. Racing is not in the cards for me anymore. Did I seek it out? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, things are moving forward. There's a lot of great things in place, and this coffee company is actually where I'm putting a lot of my time. It's my next venture, I would say.
Gotcha.
What I'm doing moving forward. So.
Okay. All right. So you're not like, hey, I didn't get a sponsor in 2020. I'll try again. Like you're moving past that.
Yeah, we're moving forward, putting a stamp on it.
Hey, Weege here. Real quick interruption of the Dunge. Just a reminder, Yoshimura-RD.com for information on the RS-12 exhaust. If you're a Ryan Dungey fan and you like KTMs because of it, they've got exhaust for that. If you're a Ryan Dungey fan and you were all excited about him maybe coming back in a Honda, they have exhaust for that. They've got cool Trail Bike Series exhaust as well. So go to Yoshimura-RD.com and also MX Tech Suspension, MX-Tech.com, and get more info on the Lucky Fork, dual springs, dual cartridges, Huck valves, but also ultra lightweight. That's what happens when you spent a lifetime specializing in dirt bike suspension. Head over to MX-Tech.com. Now back to me and the Dunge.
So
I'm glad you put it this way, though, because, again, when we heard you might want to race again, everybody's like, dude, why? He's got money. He could get hurt. But what you're saying is because it's really hard to find something else that gives you that feeling. That's why.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to act like I have it all together or be soft here, but, was it tough trying to figure a lot of stuff after racing? It was, absolutely. But at the same time, you learn so much more about yourself. And I think the biggest thing is just making sure that you're making the right steps to move forward and applying yourself. And racing's just been a part of my life for so long. And it's, it's also time to turn the page. And we did that a months ago, and we're moving forward now. So, will I still be involved in some aspect, some way regarding the industry? Right now, I'm not so much, but yeah, probably. But we're on to other ventures too. Yep. So that's also exciting, and it's also something good to look forward to.
Hey, how close did you actually get? Like, was there ever a time where you got to the point you're like, okay, it's happening, or was it always touch and go, or did you get really close at one point?
With coming back?
Yeah. Was it always a guess, or was there a time where you're like, wait a minute, I think this is going to happen? Did you get to that point, or did it never get that close?
No, I will say there were some offers that came to the table that was pretty much, hey, take it or leave it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it was, it was next to, it didn't really, risk versus reward. It was like I wasn't going to come back and race for free. I know my value and worth within the racing industry, but I will say where I wanted to be and go with it. It was just a matter of coming up with the dollars, and we just couldn't find them in the times like this. So yeah.
Okay, so it was never like you never woke up one morning saying, "I think it's happening." It was always what I want is not quite there. It was never quite there.
It never. No.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I guess I'm saying it's not like you were there and then the rug got pulled out. It just never got there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
This is what's hard. I think it would be very difficult for most people to look and say, like, this guy lived his dream, has all his money, he's got a great family. What the heck? Like, it would be hard, I think, for people to not think it's the awesomest thing ever, but dude, like I said, you're just an ambitious person, and it'd be really hard to be like, yeah, I'm just not going to work for the next 40 years. Like, it sounds awesome. It sounds like you won the lottery, but most people would go crazy. You got to do something.
Oh, and that if I learned anything, I remember hearing a story that, and I don't know who it was, but it was a billionaire. The guy died. I think he committed suicide.
Wow.
And I never forget it because they said that, he had everything to live on, but nothing to live for. And it's like that. I heard that like 4 or 5 years ago, and I thought to myself, I don't care how much money you have. And when I hear somebody say, like, you know, if they're young and I can't wait to sit back and do nothing.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Because now knowing what I know, I'm like, man, that's the saddest statement I never want to hear it, because it's like, that's the point where you're going to go downhill, and you always got to do something and have purpose. And yeah, we all have purpose, right? I mean, we're going to, you know, raising your kids and having a family. And if you don't have that, I mean, we're all gifted at something, and we all have a goal or a dream. It's good to have those things. It's healthy. Granted, they're not super selfish and you know, and so forth, but you need that. I mean, we need that as humans, and it just goes to show in what I've been through and what I've learned. Like we need to apply ourselves, and as humans, and the second you stop doing that is the beginning of the end. And I know that I never want to do nothing.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's easy for people on the outside to be like, that sounds awesome. It doesn't, it's not actually awesome to do nothing.
Exactly.
Okay. On this coffee deal, so that's as hands-on as you can get. You were actually working on it in your garage, and then the first people, I guess, that got bags, it was actually hand-done by Ryan Dungey. So when we see these different flavors and stuff, this is like completely like from the mind of Ryan Dungey to someone's kitchen countertop. That's why you have different roasts.
Yep, exactly. Cool. And so, yeah, no, it is. And I mean, very much, like I said, involved in every aspect of the way. I mean, from the, you know, and, you know, so we've sourced it, we've tested it. It's the highest quality coffee, highest grade of coffee you can buy. And so it's like the quality is the highest, and that's where you're going to get the good taste. And granted that we do the roasting process the right way and everything. So yeah, it's been fun. And just like trying to find tenths on the track, right? We're trying to find bits and, you know, a little bit of improvement here and there and within every step of the process. So that's what also makes it enjoyable. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Because we're just talking about a roast, but it is a business. So there's a bunch of other things that come with it.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, and not to go in too great of detail, but like, you know, even in the beginning, right? Like I got 5 different origins they sent me of samples to roast and try, right? So then all right, now you got your origins. Now you got to find your roast profile. What's your profile going to be to bring out the notes and the flavors? And, you know, how long do you want to roast it, right? Do you want to go to a medium roast? Do you want to go to dark? Like where's that stopping point? Well, then it's sharing it with your family and friends. Like, hey, what do you guys think of this? Like, and getting opinions and cupping and all this stuff. And so it's like a full on, like, kind of makes your head hurt in the beginning when you don't, you know, the learning curve, right? Yeah. So setting up a suspension internally, you know, you can do it thousands of different ways. I mean, that's kind of what a profile is like with, you know, building a roast profile, right? So it's very tedious, but fun.
Yeah, and then, like I said, that's just the coffee part. You have to set up, you know, an actual business, and there's money involved, and a website, and shipping, and all that too.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, in the beginning, it was the amount of hours and time. I mean, there was times I'd come up from downstairs after working, and I'm looking at Lindsay like, dude, I don't know if I made the right choice here. Like, I don't understand this, you know. But it you know. You learn, you know, you develop, and, you know, you realize, you know, you just don't know what you don't know. So it was just a steep learning curve, and, you know, from, you know, packaging, you know, finding the right packaging and, you know, design and labels to the finances. So it's kind of cool, because I will say these are all the things that are involved with it is what I was excited to learn about within a business. And so, you know, I'm very early in my stages, but at the same time, you know, there's a lot to learn. You know, things are constantly changing.
Yeah, well, I think what we learned here, I mean, you're a guy with a high profile. This could be like a vanity project. Like, you could just slap your name on something, and that could be one way to do it. But I think it's pretty clear now that's not. You were putting in the hours.
No, exactly. And that's if I could make sure that people know, this is not just slap your bag on or slap your name on a product and call it yours. Like, no, we've every step of the way is very much. You know, that we've been involved in every part of the process. So,
real quick, we'll just talk about Supercross here. You've already said it's not like you're an insider anymore. You're not getting any more information than anybody else watching on TV. But what have you thought about what you've seen?
Well, I got to say, it's a pretty stacked field.
Yeah.
When I'm seeing the practice times, what is it? The top 15 within a second?
Yep.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like splitting hairs. So as far as the depth of talent it's really close, and that could change from race to race.
Mm-hmm. Hey, can you enjoy watching that kind of chaos, or are you still too engaged to be like, oh, it would drive me nuts, like it's too inconsistent, I don't know what's going to happen, or can you just be like a fan and be like, all this unpredictability and chaos is fun to watch?
Oh, well, geez, as a fan, you're like, yes, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is, you got a lot of guys in the mix, but as a rider, I'm just knowing what that's like. Man, why do we all got to be within a second? Because as a rider, these guys are used to, I'm going to put a second on this guy a lap. Like, that's the mentality we have. And now you're saying, well, okay, now it's like NASCAR, I'm going to put a tenth on this guy every lap. And you're like, okay, well, a tenth every lap is still, a little bit, but it's not like, it's just splitting hairs. So it's just interesting. It's going to be that much harder to win a championship in this day. Yeah.
I had a feeling that you'd have a little bit in the back of your mind of stress of like, man, if I was in that situation, this would be tough. I had a feeling that you'd still have a little bit of that back there.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, that for sure crossed my mind. I mean, yep. There's a more depth of talent field, or more. How do I say that? There's more. The depth of talent is deeper. Yep. But and maybe more than previous years. But I think what we're always going to see is, once the excitement after the first round. I mean, this is a long series, and it's going to wear on guys. And usually, I don't know if it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 guys who are going to kind of rise to the top. Those guys are going to be the guys out front. I mean, that always tends to happen here. So,
yep.
And that's just going to happen over time, by the 4th, 5th race, 6th race. So
always does. Hey, last thing is this weirdo racing schedule that they had to do last year in Salt Lake, and this. Okay, I'm going to guess. I feel like you were a guy who really liked having your stuff carefully dialed in. I feel like this would be weird. Do you think you would have enjoyed this, or would it have been a little stressful? Like, man, this is totally different, and I can't even get to the test track or anything. Would that have been good for you or bad?
Well, I think good, because we're all in the same boat, right?
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's something as a rider. Yeah, I mean, if something's extremely off, it sounds like you could go to a track maybe nearby, and I mean, you're probably not going to be able to do that in Indy, right? Because it's cold.
Yeah.
But there's something that's kind of nice as a rider, just kind of knocking it out race by race by race. But you do have less travel, so that in a sense is good. Everybody else is in the same boat. So as a rider, I wouldn't be stressing too much. It is what it is. But and you compensate for. It is a little interesting, but at this, I think the biggest thing is just like, man, when you're racing on a Tuesday and you're like, well, it's a weekday. That's mentally that's weird, right?
Yes.
But I don't think it's such a big thing where these riders aren't like they're so thrown off, right? So,
and you think you would have been able to adapt the same way? Like, it would have been okay if you had to do it. Yeah. It is funny though, dude. Like, I asked every single rider and team before the season, like, what are you going to do? Like, round 1, you don't get to go back to the test track, and everybody's usually out of sorts. And every single guy's like, it's not a problem. We're ready. We're comfortable. And now I've heard all these stories of changing this, trying to find a track there. And I'm like, exactly what I thought. They all thought they were going to be fine. And after the first 2 races, or even the first 1 race, they're like, I got to find a track.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, honestly. Like, there's nothing worse than like going to a race and like you're going to try something. I mean, we as a racer, we try to stay far away from that as possible. But if there was something that we thought like, hey, this could be a big benefit and it could help, we're going to try it in the first or second practice. There's just nothing worse. Like, it's just so nice to go into a race and you have your setup dialed in, you feel good. But if you can't test in the middle, like, yeah, then that's when mentally the games start to come into play for these riders. Like, yeah, not good.
Yeah, we got to watch for that. Okay. All right. Well, hey man, I'm happy for you. I mean, it sounds like you found a good place here, and I mean, I'm sure that the coffee itself and the business is cool, but it sounds like it's done wonders even just for you personally. So that's cool.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
No, well, thank you. I appreciate it, Jason, and thanks for everybody for the support too.
And there it is, Ryan Dungey not coming back. But that answered a lot of questions. He just wanted to come back and be old Ryan Dungey. He wanted to win races, titles, so at least give it everything he had and have that ambition and try to strive for it. This was not I'm going to come and train hard and ride hard, but I'm going to be okay with getting 10th, and I'll get to hang out with the fans and have a good time. Because I think until the very end, I think Dungey had it dialed pretty well at the end, but I think a lot of his career was just more stressful than it was enjoyable, especially on race day. Although I will say that last season in 07, I was shocked. Ken Roczen was coming in like a house of fire. He had switched to Honda. Everyone was all pumped up. Ken Roczen had really dominated outdoors in 16 on the Suzuki. It really looked like he was coming into his own. And I think a lot of folks were wondering, oh man, what's Dungey going to do? What's Dungey going to do with this Roczen guy? And I remember I got to go to the KTM test track. It must have been, I think press day was Thursday, and they rode the test track on Friday to break in the race bikes. And Dungey and Anderson and Marv, they were Eldon Baker's guys at the time. They all rode. And by the way, you know how they always say that you can't answer the question of who's fastest because it changes from lap to lap and moto to moto? It was totally true. I remember the first time they rode that day, I was like, dude, Anderson. Oh, Anderson's the guy. He looks so much better than Dungey and Marv. He's faster, too. I'm marking them where they are on the track. And then by the end of the day, that wasn't the case anymore. At one point, I think Marv looked good and Dungey looked good. It really did vary lap to lap, session to session. Surprising how that works. And I think that's why, by the way, these lap times we see in practice and the races are closer than they used to be because these guys are all so tight. Anyway, after they rode that day, and everyone's thinking, oh man, how's Dungey? Is he worried about Roczen? Roczen's coming for him. Roczen's coming for his title. He's got to be nervous. He's got to be worried. Dungey, I was actually talking to his dad, and his dad's like, hey, we're going to Chipotle. You want to come with us? And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, is Ryan okay with it? And then Ryan's like, yeah, whatever. So I ended up going to lunch at Chipotle with Ryan and his dad the day before this race. And dude, it was like going to lunch with anybody else. You would not know that this guy's season was about to start the next day, or he was worried about Roczen on the Honda, or anything like that. He had finally gotten to that point, I think, where he wasn't worried, as he said in this podcast, when he's eating lunch the day before the race at Chipotle, he's not thinking about the race the next day. I think that lasted a little while, but the Roczen injury at round 3 really rocked the industry pretty bad. I don't think Dungey was ever the same after that one. Remember, he had had his own injury the year before, and he has said multiple times that he was thinking of retiring then, and then he decided to not retire and race in 2017, and then 3 races in, Roczen has that big injury. And then I don't think anyone, when the pressure is on in a really close title fight as it was between he and Tomac that year, I don't think anybody can ignore the pressure to that point. You know, when it's down to a couple of points over the final races of the year, I don't care how comfortable you are with your position in the industry or how well you can channel out all that energy when you're at lunch at Chipotle. The pressure of a close championship is just going to be gnarly for anybody. So I don't think we got that full Dungey at the end. I think it was probably just a pretty stressful 2017 experience. And it led me to think, okay, yeah, maybe he wants to come back because he just wants to have a more lighthearted approach to racing. Nope, doesn't sound that way. He wanted to come back because he wanted to win, just like he used to. And it's unfortunate we'll never know how it would have gone because it didn't happen. And Dungey said, you know, the way the year was in 2020 with COVID and economics, it was really hard to get sponsors. Maybe that's why. We'll never know that either. You know, if he had asked to do this in the summer of 2019, would have been indifferent. I don't know. I tend to think no. I don't think there's as much free cash rolling around in this industry as people think there is, and I also don't think sponsors are as easy to find as people think they are. It's often the answer to all the questions you have about why does this work this way and why can't we do this. It's almost always down to it's a small sport and there's not nearly as much money around as you think. So I always defer to that answer first. So we'll never know. Would have been cool to have Dungey back out there this year. Can you imagine throwing him in the mix of what's already a pretty competitive field? Thanks to our sponsors here for the Exhaust Podcast, of course, Yoshimura. Check out the RS12 exhaust system. Go to yoshimura-rd.com. And also MX Tech Suspension. Go to mx-tech.com for more information. They got the Lucky Fork, dual springs, dual cartridges, Huck valves, and ultra lightweight. And subscribe to the magazine as well, racerxonline.com. There's subscribe ads right in your face, so do it. All right, we'll see you next week, everybody.